Hey guys, and welcome to this edition of Scruff's Garage. So today's video is going to be about setting up your helmet for a Hans device and a communicator. In a few weeks, I'm driving in a 24 hours of Lemons race, an endurance road race. And while Lemons cars are inexpensive, the safety equipment is still required to be just like any other type of wheel-to-wheel racing. So I've been prepping to make sure I've got everything set up and ready before the race. One component of that is getting my helmet set up to work with a Hans device and a communicator so I can stay in touch with the guys back in the pits during the race. So as I set up my helmet, I thought it might be of benefit to some others. It's not overly complicated, but sometimes seeing somebody else do it once just helps you visualize what you need to accomplish if you're going to do it for your own helmet. So I thought I'd bring you along as I get my helmet set up. I've got one here from a buddy. His helmet is already set up, and I'm actually going to be using his Hans device. So we'll talk about that as we get into it. Okay, so I adjusted the camera so you can see a little bit more of what I'm doing that you may not be able to see me personally very well. So I wanted to start the conversation by talking about getting your helmet set up for Hans anchors. Any type of true wheel-to-wheel racing is probably going to require some type of a Hans device. It's an important piece of safety equipment. Your helmet may already be pre-drilled for a Hans device, but you need to understand what year your helmet is, because that's going to have a bearing on which Hans device anchor kit that you get. You'll also have to match the anchors to the type of Hans device that you're going to be using. So in this case, I'm using a buddy's Hans device, and his is already set up for what they call the quick click tether system. And of course, you could change the tether system. That's replaceable on the back of the Hans device, but since this is what his is set up for, this is what I'm going to do as well. They also have the maybe more traditional post style, and there's also a M6 style, which is kind of like a post style but with a quick release as well. So just make sure you order the kit that corresponds to how your Hans device that you're going to be using is already set up. So in this instance, I'm using the quick click anchor style, so that's the kit that I ordered. Now the year of your helmet is also important. If you're not sure what year your helmet is, typically you can pull back the padding, and on the inside you'll find a sticker that says which SA, maybe SA 2010, SA 2015. Typically most sanctioning bodies are going to allow a helmet either the most current or the one prior. So my helmet is actually an SA 2010. The SA 2015s have been out since 2015, and the SA 2020s will probably come out later this year. What that means for me is that this is the last year that this helmet will be valid, that I could use it. I could use it for karting and some other things, but even for HPDE events, and certainly wheel-to-wheel, this would be the last year that I can use this helmet. So when I install some of these components, I'm going to do so in a way that I can take them back out through the winter and put them into a new helmet when I get it. It also means that this is a SA 2010. So while mine is pre-drilled, I'll pop this out. They have little fill plugs. While it is pre-drilled for a Hans device, it does not have the threaded anchors already embedded into the helmet. Now newer SA 2015, I believe they already have the bolt anchors already in the helmet, and I'm sure the 2020s would probably be that way. But if you're using an older helmet such as this SA 2010, you need to make sure you order the Hans anchor kit that includes these large washers. This will go on the inside of the helmet and is what the bolt will thread into that anchors, if I can pick it up, that will anchor the device to the helmet. And it helps disperse the load, right? You wouldn't thread the, tap threads into the helmet. They would just pull right out. So just make sure if you have an older helmet that you're ordering the right kit. So that's what mine is. There's a nut kind of on the back of this washer, and they give you a very thin, low profile wrench that will help hold the washer inside the helmet. Actually, probably do it this way, and we'll slide this in on the inside, put our anchor in place, and then thread the bolt in. So very simple to do. I already test fit this side just to make sure everything was going to work properly for the video. So we'll do that first, and then we'll get into mounting the microphone and ear speakers as well for the communication system, but we'll do that second. Okay, so if you need to install the large washer like I do, you'll need to start by pulling back the cheek pads. Typically they're removable on the inside of your helmet. They may be velcroed in place, or mine's got some little button connectors. So just pull those back. It will give us a little bit more room to work. And then we'll put the washer, like I said, this has got, hopefully you can see that, a nut on it. So we'll use the little wrench that they gave us. And I'm going to rotate this so I can watch and see what I'm doing. But there's still an inner shell, but we want to be all the way against the outer portion of the helmet. There we go. Kind of wiggle it into place. And then you position these, like I said, the quick release, whoops, right, it's going to be upward. So to make sure you get the right side into place. There we go. Then you can slide the wrench out, and that's how that should look when you're done. You don't have to over tighten this bolt. It's only, the torque spec is 30 inch-pounds, which is not very much. So don't go crazy tightening that. Then they also include a little adhesive backed Velcro strip. This just so there's a Velcro strip on this as well. If you can see, on this side, we'll just place the Velcro strip. It keeps this easy, makes it easy to grab when you're all buckled in the car if you need to get out of the Hans device for some reason. There we go. Like I said, really easy. Just nice to see it done one time. All right, we'll move on to what may be the slightly more complicated portion of this, which is getting the communicator put in. So there are a couple of factors to consider when you're buying a communicator. First is to make sure you understand what radio is being used in the car. So there are two different style main connectors. There's the NASCAR style, which is a different connector, and then this is the IMSA style connector. So when you're ordering your microphone and your communicator, make sure you get the one that's going to correspond to what's in the vehicle so that you can plug into the radio. You can get some fancier versions of the microphone that are slightly smaller. It just depends on how much money you want to put into this. They typically all seem to have some sort of noise canceling capabilities. They'll include a small windsock to help cut down on the noise. And then the other thing, you'll have to decide, do you want to use earbuds or do you want to use these thin speakers that go inside the helmet? So this helmet is set up, if I can find it, to use earbuds. Yeah, here we go. I experimented just wearing the helmet around the house with a couple of different style earbuds that I have. Some were over the ear, some were the smaller foam type that you stick in. None of them were particularly comfortable to me, especially since with endurance racing I may be in the car upwards of 3 hours at a time. If it's pressing on the inside of your ear and can get really uncomfortable, that can be a distraction while you're racing. So I decided to use these small flush fit speakers that fit inside the helmet. They use a 3M backing, and they fit inside to the helmet, so they'll stay in the helmet all the time. And these were inexpensive. These were less than 20 bucks. Race Electronics, these came from Zamp, but Race Electronics and some others make similar type of speakers that are $30 to $50. But I just test fit these inside the helmet, and then I hooked it up because they just use, it's a standard 3.5 millimeter like headphone jack. Put an adapter on that and plugged it into my iPhone just to play some music off of Pandora. And these were plenty loud, good sound quality. So for just communicating back and forth to the pits, I think these will do really well. And they don't bother the inside of my ears like the earbuds were going to do. So I think this solution will do pretty well. So again, we want to make sure we get the speakers positioned properly. So you'll have to pull back the cheek pads, and then most of the time on these cheek pads there'll be a kind of a thin spot. This is normally where right, this is where the chin strap comes through, but then this is kind of a cutout for your ear to begin with. So that kind of will help you locate a relative position for where you're going to want to put the speaker. And you may want to test fit it a couple of times, kind of put the speakers where you think you want them, put the helmet on, and kind of feel inside of the helmet and see, does that seem like it's going to line up with your ear. If they're too far back or they're trapped behind some foam, you may not be able to hear as well as you'd like to be able to. So figure out where you want to position them, and then it's a matter of just pulling off the 3M adhesive. Like I said, it's a Velcro system, so we'll put this inside the helmet and then the speakers will attach to it. So that's what I'm going to do next. You'll also have to decide how you want to run the wiring, right? So obviously there's a wire that connects from one speaker to the next. So the back of my padding also unclips, if you can see that. I test fit and I can run the excess wiring behind there, and it's behind the foam, and I tried on the helmet. I don't feel the wiring. It's not like it's pressing into the back of my head. So that's what how I'm going to run the wiring. You may experiment with your helmet. The padding could be set up just a little differently. Figure out how you want to run the connectors if you're going to do this style. There we go. So I got the speakers in place, and like I said, I tucked the wiring back behind this rear foam. I would recommend, before you move on, put the cheek pads back in and then test fit it to make sure everything feels okay, because we're going to move on to kind of permanently mounting some of this wiring. So if there's anything you want to change, now would be the time to do it. So I'm going to do a quick test fit and then we'll move on. Okay, we're ready to move on with mounting the microphone. I should mention, you also need to think about where in the vehicle the radio is mounted. Meaning, typically it's probably going to be mounted somewhere towards the middle of the car, at the center console, or up on the dash or something on that side. So you'll want most of your wiring to be probably on the right hand side of the helmet. So even when you're mounting the speakers, right, make sure your little short microphone lead is going to be on the side where all the wiring is, because it's going to plug in right to the rest of this harness. There's the 3.5 millimeter microphone jack, or headphone jack. So, but if this were all the way over here, you'd never make it over here. So just think about that. The same thing when mounting the microphone, we got to make sure this is going to reach. So I also opted to go with the coiled cord. You can get a straight cord. Again, it kind of depends on where the radio, where you're plugging in at. Do you need some slack? Because you don't want this so tight that every time you move your head, you're pulling your communication device unplugged, or you're limited on how much you can move your head in the car. So just think about that as you're planning this. We're going to go ahead and put the little windsock over the microphone, and they include a little zip tie to hold it in place. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Once it's in the helmet, I think it's going to be more of a challenge to get to. All right, so you also have to decide how you want to run the microphone. So for me, I'm not going to permanently mount the microphone because, like I said, this is probably the only race I'm going to do this year where I need this, and then I'm going to get a new helmet in the winter. But if you are going to permanently install it, right, you're planning to use that particular helmet for a long time, using some hot glue to help hold the microphone boom in place is maybe something that would be advantageous. I've also seen where some guys sometimes cut a groove in the back of the cheek padding. Now, I kind of test fit this and I don't feel the microphone boom, so I'm not going to bother to cut up the padding. But if you were perhaps had thinner padding and you were kind of feeling that microphone boom or something, you could kind of cut a groove. And then, like I said, use some hot glue to hold this thing in place. For me, I'm going to run the clips that hold the cheek pad are going to run above it, and then there's this kind of outer lip that tucks into the shell. So I'm going to sandwich the microphone boom between those, and that's going to hold it in place for the purposes of this race, and it doesn't give it much wiggle room up or down. The other thing you'll need to plan is how's all your wiring going to come together. They include with the kit, with the microphone kit, these little P-clips, the little plastic clips. So you can see on this helmet how this is mounted, right? So it's important that this be supported so that as you're pulling on the lead to plug it in, or as you're moving about in the car, you're not ripping all your communication stuff out of the helmet. So you want to make sure this is supported at a place before it gets to like a connection point. And then you can also put a piece of Velcro. You see that's what Brian did on his helmet. So you can stick it to the top of the helmet. So if you're having some of your pit crew help you get in and out of the car, you know exactly where your communicator cord is, so they can quickly grab it and plug it into the radio. So I'm going to take a few minutes and figure out exactly how I want to mount all of this. I've got a few ideas, but then I'll show you how I'm going to mount it, but your helmet could be different depending on what you're going to do. Okay, I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this with my finger in the way, but I'm going to use the 3/8 size P-clip, and I've determined how I want to kind of bundle my wires. Keep in mind you'll have the Hans device and the tether right behind it, so you don't want to mount anything behind the Hans device because it's going to get in the way of the tether, and you don't want to accidentally grab all these cords when you're trying to unclip your Hans device. So something forward of the Hans anchor, and then figure out how you want your wiring so that everything is supported, and make sure you leave enough wiring on the inside so that you can get to your the microphone and all that sort of thing. And then just kind of mark the helmet, and then we're going to drill and use some of the included rivets. So you'll need a rivet gun, So we're going to drill the helmet and put a rivet in and get this mounted. Make sure you use the appropriate size drill bit for whatever size rivet you're going to be using. And then the scary part, drilling into your helmet. Make sure there's nothing, make sure you can feel the inside of the helmet where you're getting ready to drill, to make sure you're not drilling into your new speaker or anything important. Okay, so we've got the hole drilled, we've got the rivet kind of lightly put in place. Get all your wiring kind of tucked up like you want it to be tightened down. Then grab your rivet gun. I put the rivets include some washers, so there's a washer on the top and a washer on the inside as well, just to make sure it doesn't pull through the plastic P-clip. There we go. So we got our wiring mounted. Going to keep things in place, but let's move on to the inside of the helmet so we can put our cheek pad back in place. And then I'm going to need to cut a slice in it for the wiring to come through. And this upper piece, so I'm just going to slice it so that these two wires can come through. So that's my next step. Okay, so here's what I ended up with. So you can see the kind of P-clip is riveted into place, and like I said, for my setup I kind of looped some of the wiring together, and then I added a couple of zip ties just to keep things from getting loose or moving about. And then I added a little piece of Velcro up here at the top to help crew members when I'm getting in and out of the car, so they can grab this and plug it in to the radio. So I think this is going to work out pretty well. There you go. Hopefully you can see the microphone inside there. Of course, test fit it and make sure the microphone is in a place that it should be right in front of your lips. And you can, there's a little bit of adjustability in there anyway. And the cheek pads seem to be holding in place. So I think this is going to do what I need it to do. Of course, if it doesn't work, like I said, I'll get a new helmet in the winter and remount everything anyway. So I hope this helps. If you have any questions about how this is set up, hit me up in the comments. Be happy to answer any questions that I can. As always, thanks for tuning in to Scruff's Garage. If you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, you can stay up to date on anything that I may be doing. So, look forward to seeing you next time here on Scruff's Garage.